Welcome to Brief Encounters. Hello and welcome to Intersections, Energy and Environmental Issues in Law and Tech, a podcast sponsored by the DC Bar and the Women's Bar Association of DC. I'm Kathryn Caballero with the DC Bar Steering Committee for the Energy, Environmental, and Natural Resources Community and co-chair of the WBA Energy, Environmental, and Science Law Forum.
And I'm Cathy Pagano of the board of the Women's Bar Association of DC. Today, our guest is Ami Grace-Tardy, the Assistant General Counsel for Legislation, Regulation, and Energy Efficiency at the U.S. Department of Energy. In that role, Ami provides legal counsel on a wide range of statutory interpretation and administrative law issues, ranging from energy conservation standards to prize competitions, to advance the goals of energy efficiency and renewable energy. Ami received her JD from the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law, her MS in Environmental Science and Policy from the Johns Hopkins University, and her BS in Natural Resources from the University of Michigan. Today, we'll ask Ami about her role leading her team in providing legislative and regulatory advice and program counsel to her colleagues at the U.S. D.O.E. We'll also be asking Ami how she inspires others to focus on this key area for addressing climate change. And just so you know, Ami's remarks and those of our two moderators are made solely in a personal capacity and do not represent the views of the federal government. Welcome, Ami.
Thank you, Cathy and Kathryn. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Ami, can you tell us about your office and your role as Assistant General Counsel for Legislation, Regulation, and Energy Efficiency at the U.S. Department of Energy?
Sure. I lead a team of attorneys who provide legal counsel on all legislation and regulations for the U.S. Department of Energy. In other words, our office provides legal counsel regarding statutory requirements and administration priorities, as well as legislative review and review of other agencies' draft rulemakings and testimony. We review proposed legislation, regulations, and consult with technology and policy experts every day. We also review all testimony, as well as questions for the record that arise at congressional hearings. Especially important in the last 2 years, we advise wholly new programs and offices within the department regarding their statutory authorities to enable these programs and offices to meet the administration's goals while adhering to their congressional authorizations.
That's fascinating, Ami. And how long have you been in this role, and how has it been so far?
So I've been with DOE since 2010, and I've served in my current role for the past 2 years. It has definitely been a really exciting time. Before a couple of years ago, it wasn't commonplace to see major energy-related legislation enacted. But recently, with the enactment of the Energy Policy Act of 2020, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, a wide variety of very significant energy provisions have been enacted that our office helps to interpret when necessary and implement.
With climate change underway, your legislative and regulatory counsel is invaluable. To give us a better idea of your daily work, could you share a few examples of your regulatory practice?
Absolutely. So our office serves as regulatory counsel for the entire Department of Energy. What that means is at this moment, for example, as of a few days ago, we are reviewing about 45 notices of proposed rulemaking and 30 final rules. About 85% of that work concerns the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. But that work also includes a wide variety of rules, such as health and safety rules related to the department's nuclear waste legacy sites, updating rules regarding federal authorization for new proposed electric transmission projects, and updating rules for over $250 billion that we have in our loan programs office. And as I mentioned earlier, we also do a lot of work flowing through the enactment of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So diving in just a little bit on the energy efficiency side, people may not realize it that DOE does a lot of work to save consumers and businesses money by improving your appliance energy efficiency standards. That takes up about 60% of my time. You may be surprised to hear that more than 40% of the total energy consumed in the US is used for operating buildings. And most of that goes towards appliances and building related equipment. In accordance with the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975, DOE implements minimum energy standards for a wide variety of appliances and equipment used in residential and commercial buildings. Those standards are required to be reviewed and revised at least every 6 years, which is a lifetime of work for our attorneys, as our office provides regulatory counsel as those standards are developed or amended by our technical experts. To give you a sense of energy savings related to just appliances, new clothes dryers, for example, use 70% less energy than they did 30 years ago, thanks to DOE standards. And the typical consumer saves over $321 per year due to current standards already on the books. By 2030, operating cost savings from all of the already issued standards will reach $2 trillion. And the cumulative energy savings and carbon savings from these standards is enormous. 142 quads, which is over a year's worth of total US energy, and nearly 8,000 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions reductions.
That is such important work, Amy. And if I understand you, your office is reducing the energy used by all kinds of equipment, including our refrigerators and microwaves. So how do you and your team support DOE program offices in their function?
Yeah, great question, Kathy. In addition to our legislative and regulatory role, our office also serves as program counsel for EERE that I mentioned before, but also the Federal Energy Management Program, the State and Community Energy Program, and the Congressional and Intergovernmental Affairs Office. We are kind of like in-house counsel for these offices, and the questions that come to us can involve everything from ethics to IP. Essentially, we do a lot of what you would call in law school issue spotting, and we find legal issues and work with others in the general counsel's office to make sure our clients get all the legal advice that they need from one office. We also do a lot of work in support of various offices, assisting with funding flowing from the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. For example, let's look at EERE. So EERE has a mission to create and sustain American leadership in the transition to global clean energy economy through sustainable transportation, clean energy, and energy efficiency. Our attorneys help support EERE as it develops a variety of high-profile projects. For example, my team was fundamental in the development of the June 2023 U.S. National Clean Hydrogen Strategy and Roadmap. The roadmap provides a snapshot of hydrogen production, transport, storage, and use in the U.S. today, and presents a strategic framework for achieving large-scale production and use of clean hydrogen, examining scenarios at different points in time. Hydrogen is a versatile and flexible energy carrier that can be produced with low or zero carbon emissions. We also provide legal counsel for the development of the Clean Hydrogen Production Standard, the standard that will apply to all clean hydrogen activities that will be carried out under the Infrastructure Act.
That's amazing. So how do you and your team support the Federal Energy Management Program, FEMP?
Sure. So helping the FEMP office is another impactful program that we provide counsel for. FEMP works with federal agencies to meet energy-related goals, identify affordable solutions, and facilitate public-private partnerships, and also provides energy leadership to the country by identifying government best practices. With more than 350,000 energy-utilizing buildings and 600,000 vehicles, the federal government is actually the nation's largest energy consumer. Energy used in buildings and facilities represents about 40% of the total site-delivered energy use of the federal government, and vehicles and equipment energy use account for about 60%. This March, DOE announced $250 million in funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law to help federal agencies implement net zero building projects to set a sustainability example. In our role as FEMP counsel, our team helped review the executive order that also required the government to take even further aggressive actions to address climate change.
That is such important work, Amy. How long has FEMP been in existence?
Actually, a pretty long time. That's a great question. This year, FEMP will celebrate 50 years of federal energy management. In September, there will be a week of engaging training, collaborative sharing of information among federal energy and water management experts, and key successes and visions for the future will be shared amongst those federal agencies.
That sounds like a great event. You also mentioned the Office of State and Community Energy Programs. Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure, no problem. Our office provides counsel for SCEP, as we call them, State and Community Energy Programs. SCEP works with states and local organizations to speed up deployment of clean energy technologies catalyze local development, and create jobs, reduce energy costs, and avoid pollution through place-based strategies involving a wide range of government, community, business, and other stakeholders. Programs include things like the Weatherization Assistance Program and the State Energy Program, both of which have been around for more than 40 years, successfully delivering energy savings to low-income homeowners and the states. SCAP, as I was calling it earlier, is part of DOE's new Office of the Undersecretary of Infrastructure. Now, that's an office that was created in February of 2022, and it received approximately 90% of the Infrastructure and Inflation Reduction Act funding and is responsible for coordinating all DOE infrastructure and implementation activities.
That is such a broad portfolio, Amy. Do you find yourself learning about new practice areas in this rapidly developing area?
Yes, all the time. With all of these new authorities and programs, our office's portfolio has expanded quite a bit in the past 2 years. Our office is now delving into things like tax law, since the infrastructure legislation and other enactments have enhanced or newly offered tax credits, tax rebates, or assistance for a variety of clean or renewable energy efforts. We provide assistance to our counterparts at IRS as appropriate and ensure that the information DOE provides about these programs is also digestible to the public while complying with statutory requirements.
Amy, it's clear from what you have shared with us that you are passionate about this important and critical work. We don't often hear the details of this type of regulatory and legislative practice in energy law, and it sounds fascinating. How did you get involved in this type of legislative and regulatory practice? And do you have any advice for those entering the field?
So, on the first question of how I got involved, I worked for environmental nonprofits for several years and became interested in going to law school. And after law school, I worked in the private practice area and did litigation and regulatory work and decided my heart was really in the regulatory sphere. If you're interested in getting excited in an area of law that involves the development of laws from A to Z, including analysis of the need for new policy through the legislative process, and then actually implementing that legislation, consider a legislative/regulatory practice in energy law. Also, DOE is actively involved in addressing climate change through all of these activities. So if you're interested in climate change work, our work is really directly impactful. Energy literally touches every part of our lives. Also, if you're still in law school, see if your law school offers energy classes. Compared to when I was in law school many, many years ago, there are many more options available for law students. And I know when I'm looking to hire new attorneys, I'm looking to see that they have a proven interest in energy law. If you're looking at transitioning into this area, the legal skills you currently have can be a big asset. We're always looking for thoughtful and dedicated people to help with the mission. The skills that I have from working in the private sector for regulated parties have helped me to better understand the interests of those parties. And also, my background in the environmental nonprofit sector provides me a good handle on those interests as well.
That's great advice for this broad portfolio. Is there something in particular that you find inspirational about the area that you practice in?
So maybe it's cliche, but I find my colleagues very inspirational. I'm lucky to be surrounded by a group of smart attorneys, truly dedicated to the mission of the department, who are willing to put in the hard work when they need it and are always there to find the best path forward for their clients. They inspire me to be a better lawyer and a better leader.
Now, this is an area of practice that has changed significantly in the last 10 years. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think as energy law has evolved in the past 10 years, you see a wide variety of players in this space, right? Everything from economists to lawyers to planners. And as a regulatory lawyer in this space, you have to be able to work with all sorts of folks with all different types of skill sets. I will say, for example, many of the lawyers in our shop, most of them don't come in as energy lawyers. Many of them are environmental lawyers or regulatory lawyers, or they just loved administrative law in law school and have a real interest in that space. People with all sorts of backgrounds. We also often work with people in the legal shop that are engineers themselves and have a really good, solid technical background, which does help in the work that we're doing. I also would mention day to day, I'm generally working with scientists and engineers because the Department of Energy is mostly a science based organization. So having those skills and being able to work in a technical space and being able to understand technical documents is a huge bonus.
Amy, I couldn't agree more. And it sounds to me like you are very, very busy working with all of these individuals. How do you maintain a work life balance?
I find the work I do to be really important, so it energizes me, which does help a lot, as does coffee. But I do have two school-age kids, and I try to be as involved in their activities as much as possible. So I try to find balance each day. Frankly, my kids are what inspire me. I mean, I'm working on climate change work, and so I do think about the broader picture each and every day, which helps ground me and helps inspire me when those late nights happen, as they inevitably do, that I'm trying to make the world a better place for them and for all of our kids. Working primarily from home in these past few years has allowed me to be more involved in their lives, which also makes it possible to fit in those late nights when needed. And I actually really believe in unplugging when I'm on vacation, and I always share that with my staff. I think we all need to recharge our batteries with the people and places we love to have the mental capacity to keep up with this administration's aggressive agenda.
Great advice and tips. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, as this is an area under rapid development, as you've described, do you have any client management tips or other advice to share to help and mentor others in their career paths?
That's a really great question. One of the mantras I always repeat within my office is we may not get the client to their goal using the path that they are proposing, but we will get them to their goal. We are given many questions on a daily basis, and usually they are rapid fire questions, and the clients are under pressure to get documents out for all sorts of reasons. I try really hard to get to know my clients well, to gain the trust from my clients so they're able to talk to me early and often so I understand what their real problems are, what their challenges are, what their deadlines are, and get them to where they need to be. And to be able to describe the legal advice in a way that makes sense to them to help get their buy in into that legal advice. Because most of the people I work with, like I said before, are scientists and engineers, they're not necessarily thinking about the legal implications of everything, which is fine. But when you have that close day-to-day relationship with your clients and you build that trust with them, it makes giving them the bad news easier than it would have been otherwise. Also, just generally keep up with your contacts. Anyone that you're working with in the legal office or elsewhere, you never know when you may need that person. And remember to show professional respect and kindness to everybody, everyone from the senior attorney to the new administrative assistant. One of my favorite quotes I always keep in mind is from the brilliant Maya Angelou, who said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel."
It's a great quote. It's very true. Amy, we want to thank you for taking the time to share these developments in your practice area and at the Department of Energy and your valuable time with us and our listeners. Thank you to the DC Bar, the Women's Bar Association, and all of our listeners. And we invite you to watch for our next Intercessions podcast. Thank you so much.